Are you a solopreneur, a team of 5 ready to scale, or a remote team in SLC looking for a new space? Look no further. The Square has everything you need. Fast Wi-Fi, meeting rooms, great coffee, daily breakfast and snack, and a vibrant community to keep you inspired. From dedicated desks to private offices and enterprise suites, there's a space for you. No matter where you are in the journey, the Square has a spot to help you succeed. Check out the Square's co-working and flexible office space today and take your work to the next level. Let's be honest, we're all juggling a lot these days. Between work, family, and everything else, the last thing you need is to spend hours dealing with car-related tasks. That's where Fleetly comes in. Fleetly is your personal car concierge service designed to give you your time back. Need an oil change, car service, ride to the airport, Fleetly takes care of it. Want your vehicle detailed or even sold? Fleetly's got you covered. No more waiting in lines, no more wasted weekends at the shop, just more time to do what really matters, whether it's growing your career, enjoying moments with your family, or just kicking back and relaxing. Right now, Small Lake City listeners can get 10% off with code SLCPOD at checkout. Visit Fleetly.com and let them handle the hassle so you don't have to. Again, use SLCPOD at checkout for 10% off.
It was like the only project I've actually truly quit on because it got to be so mentally taxing. I'm kind of born and raised in Lubbock, Texas. We wound up here for an engineering gig. The story, at least behind the running the streets and the inspiration was, oh man, I haven't been to like large swaths of the city that never really had a reason to. And so I kind of made a reason. I don't know. I will never take for granted that experience because it was very illuminating and eye-opening. I gotta have to like have that intentionality to try something new. Or it's kind of like what kind of kickstarted my idea to start the Instagram, because like I had literally seen it all, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of share, the mildly interesting things of Salt Lake. Like that's a true like Small Lake City moments. Oh, yeah. Like I just visited all the Crown Burgers across the great state of Utah, all in the same day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Small Lake City Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Nilsson, and this week's guest is someone who has arguably seen more of this city than anybody else. His name is Bryant Heath, but you probably know him better on Instagram as SLSees. In 2020, he decided to run every single street in Salt Lake City, taking him the entire year. But it also inspired him to go back and document some of the unique places he found and share them with all of us. We talk a lot about the challenges he's done, like running every street in Salt Lake, the Crown Burger Challenge, the Library Challenge, that really have helped him give a reason and a way to get to know the city better. But I love talking with him. You can hear in his voice how much he loves the city and how much he loves doing things to help him get to know it better. But enjoy this conversation. It's a good one. He's a great person to have in our city, and we're lucky to have him. But enjoy this week's episode. Because oh, there we go. Cool. I couldn't hear myself for a second, but that makes a lot more sense. But yeah, it's been a morning, but the morning is now almost over, and this is how we're ending the morning, which is even better. What was your last Bryant?
Heath.
Heath.
Yeah,
Bryant
like
Heath.
the candy bar.
Which is one of my friend's favorite candy bars.
Oh, awful.
Thank you. Because like I go to his house and he's just crushing Heaths, and I'm like, listen, you don't have to do this to yourself. Yeah. But yeah, it's that's what always reminds me of Heath. Dang. Yeah, it's what a morning. But you've had a more interesting morning.
Yeah.
Because you went and did the point in time count. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, that's when they, in the most scientifically accurate way possible, given the circumstances at hand, to go and count the homeless population of Utah or Salt Lake. Probably both, but obviously.
Yeah, I think it's stretched out across all counties in Utah. Obviously, I just focus in on Salt Lake and different geographies that they give us assigned to us. And they do this on an annual basis. Usually they pick kind of a evening, early morning time in January, because they presume if you're out on the streets, whenever it's exceptionally cold, from the hours 4 to 6 a.m., you're truly without shelter. Yes. There's no other available options to you. And so they use this kind of count of homeless people to kind of help with funding aspects and also direct services to different areas throughout the city. So
I mean, it's the only way to be like, all right, so here's how much resources we actually need to help support the homeless. Understand, I mean, are things doing better? Are things doing worse?
Right, exactly. Because without any sort of metrics, how would you know if what policies you're implementing is actually targeting and having a beneficial impact? So, yeah.
Totally. And I mean, anybody who's from Salt Lake or interested in Salt Lake knows that I mean, one of the biggest complaints I hear from people, both guests and just in my life in general, is homelessness. And a lot of people, like it's hard to hear people talk about it because some people have like a very unhumane way of looking at it, where it's like, why can't we just get rid of them? And I'm like, it wouldn't take it in the wrong context, 'cause that kind of sounds genocidal. But it's such a dynamic issue. So many conversations I've had about how dynamic of an issue it is. But I mean, for like tactically, I mean, how did you guys go about it? Was it just, I mean, kind of walking, like, here's your space, go walk around, go count?
It's basically how it is. They kind of hand you a map of kind of the swath that you're supposed to cover. It's for 3 consecutive nights from 4 to 6 a.m. And you just basically walk around and see whom is out on the street. Sometimes they're, in tents or under blankets. Sometimes they're just walking around, and you kind of ask them, hey, you tell them the spiel of what you're doing. A lot of them are already familiar because they've already done previous years, some of which aren't, and some of them are sleeping, and you don't disturb them kind of at the all.
You're not open up tents and be like, hey, is there 2 of you in your 3 or in your?
It's like all on, the discretion of what they feel most comfortable in, but we still kind of count. And this is the second time I've done this, and each time it's kind of a powerful experience. It's obviously like it's great to get back to the community, and it is such important work. So you want to know, the extent of the problem and also how best to help moving forward. So, yeah.
Totally. Well, thank you for doing it. I mean, it's not the most ideal way to spend your Friday morning from 4 to 6, but I mean, it's definitely one of the most productive things you could do in the hours of 4 to 6.
Well, and then I took a nap, and now I'm here. So I appreciate the invite to come on and chit chat more about Salt Lake.
No, I'm really excited about this one. So Bryant Heath, everybody knows him best as SLSees on Instagram, who's done, which we'll get into, countless things, some to name, running every single street in Salt Lake City. The Crown Burger Challenge, the 7 crowns, well, now kind of 8, and then and more, which we'll get into. But definitely someone who understands Salt Lake, the underbelly of Salt Lake, kind of the unique oddities of Salt Lake, which are always so, like, I'm always fascinated because you're like, did you guys know this existed? I'm like, not even maybe, but now that I do, I see it everywhere. Like the one that I think I saw the most after you mentioned it was, you have to help me with the name of them are, but those small Japanese like cars.
Oh, the Kai cars. Yeah. And the Kai trucks. Yeah.
And so as soon as like you had the post of them all, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I went to the dog park. I'm like, there's one. And then I went somewhere else. I was like, there's one. Yeah. So they just kept popping up everywhere. So I love that it's kind of this, hey, pay attention. Yeah. And if you pay attention to this one little detail, you'll see it everywhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
But before we kind of get into the motivation for all the things that you've done and the city you've come to love, I would assume, wanted to kind of talk about how we got here. Because from what I remember, you're from Oregon.
Yeah, so I had a circuitous route to Utah. I'm kind of born and raised in Lubbock, Texas, which is like West Texas, mostly known for Texas Tech University, and former football coach Mike Leach had a stint there. Post-graduation, though, I kind of went throughout the United States and the world, and then ultimately wound up here for an engineering gig, and didn't know anything about Utah prior to my arrival, like I would say arguably most transplants. But as soon as you land on an airplane, you see the Wasatch Mountains and how close everything is, and just the natural beauty from up in the air. It's you can kind of envision yourself staying here, even if it was supposed to be quote unquote temporary. Oftentimes it's not. Totally. So, yeah.
I mean, that was the one that sticks out for me in that combo is with Kendall Rodriguez, Queen of SLC. And so she works, her day job is the director of operations for the women's basketball team at the University of Utah. And so she would try to be having these recruitment trips, being like, hey, just come visit. And all of these girls would be like, well, I don't know, like USC is interested, or like all these other major cities, like bigger schools, even though University of Utah is becoming a powerhouse in itself. They'd be like, well, I don't know. But she's like, I know if I could get them here, I could pretty much seal the deal because it presents so well, especially from a flight. I mean, you roll up that shade and you're like, wait a minute, the mountains are right there. Here's this city. This is so pretty. Like, okay. And then you land at the airport, you're like, oh, it's only like 10, 15 minutes to downtown. Like, okay. Like I was thinking about that in the context of Sundance because they've been threatening to leave Park City. Right. But then as I was thinking about it, I'm like, I can't think of all the other places they're thinking off the top of my head, but I would assume and I would argue that as far as getting in and getting to a place, especially in the winter or like winter towns, there is no easier place than Salt Lake / Park City. I agree.
And so it just has that natural draw, and I was drawn to it and decided to make it kind of my my home, and I've been here for close to 15 years now.
Dang.
So it's kind of wild. Yeah.
When you moved here, did you come with the mentality of like, this is a stop, like
Yeah,
temporary?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was like early in my career, so you never know what life will take you and what you would be drawn to, and it was such a good match and fit for myself, and I loved being here ever since, to be honest. So
That's awesome. And I mean, so you land here, you're like, okay, it presents well. I mean, what were your first thoughts and I mean, as you kind of like got settled and started living your day-to-day life?
I appreciated mostly about how it's like the biggest little city or the littlest biggest city, if you want to think. Everything is very easy to navigate around. Usually we have like at least one of everything, I would say, whenever it comes to like, restaurant types or entertainment variety. It's like we have a good solid one, that you can kind of build off of, and has since built off tremendously over the past decade or so. But it's just like easy to navigate around, easy to get from place to place. It's just, I don't know. It's just like kind of my type of environment to be in. So,
because I agree. Like I've traveled most of the U.S., been in pretty much every primary and secondary city in the U.S. And it's like interesting to see that because everybody, I mean, especially the young, the people who like, again, starting their career, they're drawn to the big cities, most opportunities. But you get there and like after a while, you're like, man, there's like all of these faces that go by. It's hard to be really personable.
Yes.
Like you just kind of get swallowed by it. But then at the same time, you don't want to be in like Kansas and feel like, oh, cool, like met the dating pool last week, or everything's online and I can't get it. And like there's like a lot of pains that come with that. But I think with Salt Lake, it is that sweet spot of, okay, you have everything you need, but you also have access to like the mountains within 10, 15 minutes. You have, I mean, that it gets further zoomed out of go drive 3 hours in each direction. There's different things. And just like this amount of accessibility will always be one of my favorite things. And especially a city where like you can go out and be like, oh, I see some people I know, or you don't feel like you're a cog in a bigger
or just a number, or just a faceless being, walking down the sidewalk. So yeah, I agree with that.
Cool. So you move to Salt Lake and you get, I mean, settled up for all intents and purposes. I mean, so let's see. So if it's 2025 right now, 15 years ago would have been 2010.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, like your claim to like Salt Lake City fame was SLSees, but I mean, what led up to deciding to be like, hey, I'm going to start posting some things and start doing some things?
Yeah, great question. I think like for the first decade, like most young professionals, you're kind of focused in on your career and your day-to-day life, and you kind of fall into these routines or ruts, like your Monday through Friday, you do the commute, you go to work, you come home, you go to the grocery store, you fix your meal, you fall to bed, and then you rinse, wash, repeat for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And maybe you get to live a little bit on the weekends, whether it's out going skiing to enjoy the natural beauty or hang out with friends. But I noticed like for the first decade or so, that was kind of what my routine was. And so the story, at least behind the running the streets and the inspiration, was I was looking for a place to eat, and I was like Google mapping, and I was like, oh man, I haven't been to like large swaths of the city. They just seem so distant and remote, and I just never really had a reason to prior to my like looking into how amazing some of these different communities and neighborhoods are. And so I kind of made a reason, and I was like, this will be a great little urban exploration project. I like running. I've always enjoyed running, and I'll get to kind of kill two birds with one stone, kind of learn a little bit more about the city while also getting good exercise in. And the project just kind of conveniently happened during the COVID year as well. So I started in January 1st, and then, COVID happened the following March. So it kind of worked well with respect to schedules to be able to actually accomplish the goal at hand. And I don't know, I will never take for granted that experience, because it was very illuminating and eye-opening. I got to see so many things about the city, the great, the good, the bad, the ugly, the whole 9 yards, and came out with a newfound appreciation of where I lived, unquestionably. So
that's like no stone unturned.
No, absolutely not.
Probably everything from like, I didn't know this mural existed to, is that a dead body? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get to, especially on the way far out west fields, that most people don't venture out to, when things get larger than 9,000 west, things get a little wild out there on the rural roads of Salt Lake City. But yeah.
What were some of the places that you saw during that I mean, let's go both ways. First, of what was like, wow, I didn't know this was here, or I didn't know this was like existed, and now it's like a place that you think is really great. And then on the other side, someplace you're like, you know what, I never need to go back.
Yeah, great point. I was intrigued by like the farmland that existed. It's very small, but it's kind of north of the airport. Some people might go there. I think there's like a Crossy Ranch kind of area, but there's also like some larger acre, not larger than Crossy Ranch, but still like several acre plots up there that they still, at least in 2020, would do active farming out there, which was kind of surprising to see. Obviously, the industrial parks, it's kind of like if you don't work out there, you don't really have any reason whatsoever to go see all these warehouses and distribution centers. And it's just fascinating, just like the scale and just the magnitude of how large some of these buildings and facilities are. Oftentimes I would just like run a track of maybe like half a mile, and it would just be a continuous building of just, semi trucks lined up just to get whatever goods that they're going to drive across the Intermountain. But so those were very fascinating. And then, the Lee Cay Ponds, which is kind of over by the landfill area. It's kind of like a beautiful nature park with a lot of like birding activity that's kind of atypical. Everyone goes to like the Great Salt Lake, understandably, but Lee Cay Pond is also pretty active with bird watchers, and it's ironically near a shooting range that's put on through the state. And so, there's like, I could go through the litany and Rolodex of all the odds and ends and different areas. It was just fascinating. And I would say nary like a run I had did I not come across something just like unique or something I didn't know about, whether it's just like a crazy statue in some person's front yard or some of these like larger scale kind of facilities that I didn't know existed.
Yeah, you get the big scale, you get the small scale, everything in between. Because I like that Crossy Ranch area, because same like, it was 2020 and I was biking a lot because I got laid off from a job in like, was that March or April? And they're like, got pretty good severance. So I'm like, all right, like, let's just go do all the fun things I want to do. And I was like road biking a ton and running a ton because there's nothing else I could really do. And I remember I was like, I'm so sick of my typical routes. Like, I'm going to go I've never really been over here. And as I go around, I'm like, I had no idea that this existed the way it is. Because again, like, unless you're, going to Crossy Ranch during like the fall to go get your apple cider donut and take kids to go pick some pumpkins, like that's one thing, but there's really no other reasons unless you're visiting a farm. And shocker, I don't have many reasons to go to a farm directly. So it's fun to see.
And then you think about that, and that's just one community, you know, and you can have that amplified dozens of times over, and then you can see why you don't visit 75% of the city. It's just because presumably you don't have a reason. So you kind of have to like have that intentionality to try something new or go in a different route to your normal locations to kind of cut through some of these areas. But they're all easily accessible. Everywhere I went was pretty much runnable too, with sidewalks, and I always felt safe. That's a little bit of a privilege based on, being a white male, of course. But so it was a great kind of project. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Yeah.
Well, and I love that you kind of have this like story of it being like, okay, I'm going to move here. I'm going to focus on my career. And I feel like everybody, in their 20s, it's pretty common. Anybody who's like a quote professional person, it's what you do. But then I feel like you get to this point in your 30s, you're like, all right, like I'm good. Yeah. Like I don't need like just like even just thinking about like the path between promotions or like between things becomes larger. It's not so much of like being in the nitty gritty as much as like zooming out and a lot more of like kind of like managerial or other things. And so I feel like it is a common thing in early 30s for a lot of people to be like, well, what is the passion project I want to do? What can I do to do like something else fun? Especially getting out of that monotony, because I'm someone who I find myself in ruts a lot. But like I can't just barely take myself out of ruts. I have to like completely pull myself out. Like that was part of the reason I did like went and lived in a van for 6 months. Is I'm like, well, my life's been pretty much the same. I think I need to change something. How about we just change all of it? To the point like I was gonna move. Actually, last year about this time, I was like, I think I want to move to South Carolina for 3 months. Because again, I just wanted to like blow up the monotony of it all. But then I was realizing like I need to find little points in my day that can do different. If I always go to this restaurant, let's go over here. Because like one part of my life is like I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but I interact with a lot of people. I mean, I have the podcast, I interact with people. I'm a member of a social club. I'm dating. Like, there's just so many different avenues that I have. And so I've tried to generate a lot more of this mentality of like, okay, like, let's get out of these ruts. Because if you're in the same ruts, you're going to see the same people, have the same experiences, which not a bad thing. But to broaden your horizons, it does take a little bit of an effort. Not necessarily as much as running every street in Salt Lake, but there's little things we can do to break up that monotony and have more fun with it.
Well, just as an example, like prior to my coming here, I was looking for a breakfast joint. And instead of going to my normal, stomping grounds of Fruska's Kolaches or whatever, I just decided to Google it and went to the other place, just that Greek restaurant that was just right here. I've never been there. I've heard great things about it. Great diner environment. Sat down at a table by myself and had a great meal and enjoyed it. So it's like, it doesn't necessarily have to take that much effort to have that variety and difference. It's just you have to have that motivation and intentionality for sure.
I do love the other place. It's one of my stepdad's favorite places. There's like especially like because it's a Greek spot, and I love the Greek community, and but it's like, I mean, everybody obviously knows like Crown Burger and some of the other ones, but there's also these other little restaurants you're like, oh, I didn't know that was there, or like Cinegrill's another one. I think they're out of business now, but it's fun to see. Yeah, it just takes one little decision difference, and you're like, oh, I had no idea this existed, and this is great, and will be part of my.
And it might not be like earth shattering or life changing or anything, but it's just like adds that variety and just that, spice of life, so to speak, to make it just a little bit more enjoyable your day. So.
And you have to go in realizing, like, if you're gonna try new places, they're not all gonna be great.
Right.
In fact, there's probably gonna be some bad ones. Like I went to one person I've met from Bike Club that Brandon's been starting is Fig or Christy. And I was like, take me to a place. Take me to a place you've never been to, I've never been to. Like, I need to get out of my ruts. And we went to this pizza place. And it was fine. Like, I did go back, but it was more of a geography thing than a desire thing. And she, like, felt bad. She's like, I wanted to show you something. Just like, no. Like, this is part of the experience of trying new places. Like, it's not like everywhere you go is going to be 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, but it's a normal distribution. And as long as you understand that, then you're never going to be let down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So with the streets, I mean, how long did it take? How many miles was it at the end of it all? What were the totals?
Yeah, so it took me all year to do, and I was getting up against the deadline in November, and so I had to really make like a hearted effort to complete the task. I think I was about 150 miles short come the start of December. So December was a very high mileage month for me. But in total, it was about 1,000 miles. Wow. Yeah, and it took me about a little over 100 runs to do so. So on average, about 10 miles a run. That I slowly worked my way up. But 100 runs across a whole year, you're talking about maybe 2 or 3 times every week, which isn't too demanding for most, at least active people or runners. So the logistical side of thing was the biggest challenge, where you're trying to figure out everywhere you've been so you don't kind of retread your old tracks, and then also plotting the routes of where you want to run in the given next time. So that was the most challenging part. So I kind of kept a kind of master map, so to speak, where I just upload all my GPS data from the prior year, and so at least trace out where I've been, and it would be easy to see if I happen to miss like a little segment or things like that. And then I would just kind of zoom in on an area I hadn't been, print up a physical map and hand route it, and kind of estimate roughly the mileage so I could at least time it appropriately, and then go off and run it, and then do it all over again the next run. So, and you
Dedication.
It's kind of wild. And just everywhere you go, like the most northern point and eastern point, which I didn't know, was at the tippy top of the City Creek Trail, kind of wherever the asphalt it ends. And then the southernmost point is near the Brickyard, near where that Harmon's is. And the most western point is way, way, way out on North Temple. It kind of goes along a highway out there, kind of over where the new prison is relocated to, and it continues on, and it basically butts up against the city limits of Magna out there as well. So
then it stops, and it's like freeway or bike path.
Yeah, exactly. And you can continue on doing the biking all the way up to the I think it's the Salt Palace that's out there, but it kind of stops right near kind of where that point is. But
I know that road.
Yeah,
I used to bike out there. Again, I was biking out there.
It's pretty common.
So this is where the road ends, huh?
Yeah.
Cool, hop on the bike path.
You don't see too many runners out there, I'd imagine.
No. But it's nice to know I've been to, like, you're like, here are the north, south, east, and west points.
Right.
check, and check. Cool, awesome.
Yeah, and then the following year, like, so that was 1,000 miles, and then I kind of continued on with some of the adjacent suburbs with South Salt Lake and Mill Creek and Holiday, before it started to get a little bit more unmanageable when I was having to drive out, half an hour or 45 minutes to start my run, and then run for an hour, and then another half an hour or 45 minutes back. And I was like, I think this project has hit its limit over here. So I kind of looked for other avenues and ways to kind of at least satisfy my curiosity.
Totally. Because that's like one thing I love about running is I can go just pop on shoes, out the door,
Right.
and go. Mm-hmm. Whereas like with biking, because I haven't biked in like 2 years because I sold my bike when I did the van thing, but I've never felt like I wanted another one. So I'm like, we're good. I have enough hobbies. I'm not looking for another one. Because with biking, it's like, all right, cool. Let me go put on my kit. Let me go get my water bottles together. Let me make sure my air tire pressure's there. Let me go get all my nutrition. Oh crap, I need to go to the bathroom now. I have to take it all off again. And then like 30 minutes later,
Right.
you're actually on the road ready to go. And then if you mountain bike, you usually aren't commuting to your path. So like that's why I like running. And then to feel like it gets to the point where you're like, I'm spending more time driving to go run than I am running. Like, I need to rethink this.
Yeah, I hear you.
And also, as I think about running all of Salt Lake, my brain just keeps going back to the avenues.
Yeah.
Where it's
like
you're either going this way, which is painful,
Yes.
or you're going this way, also painful. So
I broke those up into smaller chunks, of course, especially the uphill ones. But, I went slower, which is okay too. You kind of just can manage the pace as best you can. And whenever you've grown tired, and maybe I didn't finish the full route that I intended to do, but there's always the next run to complete it. So
it doesn't have to be done in one sitting.
That's right.
In fact, if you did all that in one sitting, I would be floored.
And that was like another thing I appreciated about the project is like, each run, whenever I would complete it, I'd replot the map, and it didn't seem like there was any change whatsoever. It was like the minuscule of changes between day to day. But then, you start looking at it after each month, and you start to see, all these smaller efforts when combined stacked together to do kind of like a larger kind of accomplishment, which is kind of a little bit of a microcosm, I think, to most things. It's like you're never going to get from point A to point B like immediately in one giant leap. It's always through a series of just like small decisions or small improvements, and then eventually you wind up at that point, and then you can take a look back at all the work and effort that you put on and appreciate that kind of journey that you went on.
Totally. So, yeah, you can't eat an elephant in one bite.
That's right.
and it's because like, there's such a mentality these days of, well, everything happens instantly and goes viral. And but then anybody who's tried to build anything, like, don't get me wrong, there are those fringe cases.
Yeah,
but more often than not, it's like, keep working.
Yeah,
keep
absolutely.
doing the little things. And sometimes you do so much, like, nothing's changed. But then you, again, zoom out month, quarter, year, whatever. You're like, oh, actually, we've done a lot.
Yeah, done a lot, exactly. Yeah.
So you reach this point where you're like, all right, we're good on running.
Yeah.
I've done as much as I need to. Where did your brain go next as far as finding these, ways to explore the city?
Yeah, and so that's kind of like what kind of kickstarted my idea to start the Instagram, because like I had literally seen it all, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of share kind of like, the mildly interesting things of Salt Lake. Like I feel like everyone knows about all the major sites and attractions, but not necessarily everyone knows like, the small statue or public art or interesting graffiti or anything like that. So I kind of used it as a way to kind of chronicle and also help me remember some of these kind of locations that I remember running. And so prior to starting that account, I like just brain dumped on like everywhere I could remember in individual attributes, and it was like about 200 different places and spots and things that I was like, oh, this would be kind of fun, because I never had my phone or any camera or anything when I did the run, so I had to actually retrace my steps and like go revisit and take photos and then post about them. And so it was a good way to kind of relive some of those moments. And then naturally, whenever you visit something, you might jot your memory about, oh yeah, there's these other places exactly. And slowly, it's like it avalanches down, and then 1,000 posts later, we're here where we are right now. So with a queue that's also about 200, more photographs to take before I quote unquote end the account. But so that's kind of where that kind of spurred, and I always find it fascinating because to me, all these things that I kind of post about are just like mildly interesting or just like somewhat quirky and unusual, but like to see like how many people like also have that same sense of humor or sense of curiosity that I possess myself, and whether it's through the comments or through the messages or through face-to-face meetings, I'm always just amazed that there's other people like me out in the world that appreciate these kind of interesting, unique perspectives, and I don't take that for granted as well. So it's been like the account itself has been a great avenue to meet all sorts of variety of people, get interested in just a myriad of different topics, some of which I knew going in I was kind of interested. Like I've always liked murals and public art, but other stuff like, transportation policy and how can we make more efficient, bike paths or what's the appropriate, different kind of, decision making with zoning or anything like that, to just sort of like these like kind of oddball kind of things that I never thought about mostly, but through running the account and just posting about like historical homes that I came across, it's kind of cool, and then diving into the history and then talking to some individuals who know thoroughly the historical aspects of the city. It was able to kind of expand my horizons and my appreciation of Salt Lake for sure.
Totally. And like it's like a unique experience that, I mean, not a lot of people are going to go start an Instagram account and publicly post. But speaking from some experience, it's interesting to see, like, the one that comes up to mind is the example is like I made the post about the colored scriptures billboards. Because I drive past it every day, and to one point I'm like, my finance brain and math brain is like, let's think about this for a second. But then I post that, and next thing I know, I have like the owner DMing me, and I'm like, I have a lot of questions. I'm going to ask you all of them. And so it's fun to see like how social media works sometimes, and just being able to like have like those other degrees of interest into these very specific and niche things that you can't just Google, or it's like not public knowledge, and then that just cascades into like your next curiosity, your next thing, and it just keeps on going and
like
going.
Tentacles that kind of like emanate out from whatever your core like exploration or curiosity is. Yeah, for sure. It's like one thing leads to another, and I was always surprised too, is like even the most randomest of random photos I would like post about, where I was like, no one's gonna know what this is or where this is or get it, would always have someone chime in like, oh, that's like my neighbor's house or something like that. It's like, it's just like, and that's a true like small lake city moment. It's like, you think that you found like this hole in the wall XYZ, but there's always someone else who's experienced and knows about.
It's not, it will be unique, but it's never that unique.
It's like, not like universally unique for sure. So it's kind of fun to hear their stories and such. But yeah, I don't know, I've enjoyed running the account. I'm never lacking for ideas or inspiration. Like you said, like, it's amazing just kind of where stuff leads to, and even the most urbane observations can kind of have nuances involved that you can kind of explore as well. So
and especially once you have that much, then you can kind of like group things into
things.
Does anybody know this happens this much? Or...
Well, that's one thing I've noticed now is like I'll post about a certain like location, whether it's a building or something that has some unique attribute, and then it'll go abandoned or dormant, and then a new business pops up, and it's like now it's like seeing the churn and cycle of some of these spots that I think, like, the first thing that comes to mind is the whole 9th South 11 East intersection. Like it used to be just like a flashing red light, like complete traffic nightmare, and then they did the roundabout, and then that's when the gnomes popped up, and then a year later they did the public art, and now we're 2 years past that, and they're talking about reimagining the space. It's like seeing that transformation, and that's just like the most obvious example, even under such a short amount of time of like 4 or 5 years I've been running the account. It's pretty interesting. Like I would love to take an inventory of my 1,000 posts to see how many of them are still standing, how many of them have like altered or changed, and how many of them still kind of remain to this day. So
it becomes this like historic catalog
a little
at this
bit.
Point of over
Absolutely.
time.
Absolutely.
Especially the whale is a great example.
Exactly.
When I started, didn't exist.
Yeah.
Now
it's an icon, it's a tourist attraction that people go and visit.
Like I even had a friend that came into town, and they're like, oh, like what should I do? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, if you need food, here's some ideas. Here's this, do this. And like, and by the way, where's the whale? And I was like, that is right there, 9th South 11th East.
That's right.
So I mean, the other one of your,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was when I first started following you on maybe my personal account, but it's when you did the Sugar House Park runs.
Oh, right.
Because so I lived around, and that was always
Okay.
my run. Is I would run to Sugar House Park,
Yeah.
do a lap or two, and then run back. And so
Right.
at the same time, you're like, the only thing I'm running is Sugar House Park. I'm like, if there's one park you can choose, it's better than like Liberty Park and just going in the
Yes.
same circle.
Yes.
But
Yeah, so it's like the inverse project. Instead of exploration, it's like inward exploration by just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And I was able to get several hundred laps in before. It was like the only project I've actually truly quit on because it got to be so mentally taxing to just consistently go out. And it was like kind of almost dampening my mood whenever it came time to actually lace up and run. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this again. So I threw in the towel after half a year and close to 300 laps or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it was still fun. I mean, it's still interesting. I learned, a lot about the park's history and different aspects of it. It was also during the time when they had the massive flooding from the lake. So it's like there's part of the road was shut down. So I had to navigate a different route. And, there's even within doing the same thing, there is still like slight nuances and variety that you could still appreciate from. But
once it starts taking away, like, here's this one thing I love that gets me through my week.
Yeah.
It
becomes
once
a
you
chore.
start like not enjoying it, like, listen,
Yes.
we're good. I don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I think it's like spurred a whole variety of different. After that, I was like looking for other outlets to like, get away from running the same route. So my favorite kind of running project is when it was like to promote their summer reading program, the public libraries. We kind of jointly kind of put together this route to go visit all the branches of the library, and it turned out to be pretty close to a marathon.
Oh, really?
And so I kind of added a few streets and extra mileage to get to that point. But yeah, I started at the Sprague branch and worked my way up to the Anderson Foothill branch on the East Bench, and then slowly, to the main branch and up in the avenues before crossing over Warm Spring Park crossing to get to the west side to hit all the, the Glendale branch and things like that. So when you do that whole loop, turned out to be pretty close to a marathon, which is, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty fun run. I kind of snapped a picture outside each one and, checked out a book.
That's the thing is there's like, I mean, good fun projects, good causes.
Yeah.
So
not too much planning involved, it's not too much of a commitment when all is said and done. And, it always spurs conversation and interest. And that's what I'm looking for. And you never know where inspiration will strike. And everyone kind of asks me what's my next thing. And I generally don't know until, something happens. And then it just leads to one thing or another, and then I'm out, eating 8 hamburgers or something like that.
Definitely makes sense. I just imagine you have this like pad of Salt Lake City maps where you're like, all right, well, we did that one. What's next? Cool, libraries, draw it out.
I wish I had time to be so much more creative and actually like think about things, more often. But yeah, no, not the case. Not the case.
No, I can agree with that. Like it's weird to have like in my day to day, it's not actually blocked off, but like I have time I like to set apart for like meme creation which is an odd thing that I never thought would be part of my like daily thing, but sometimes like I have no idea. But then sometimes like so much of my day is literally just like, I won't say the name because it will trigger either my phone or my watch, but like, hey, Apple voice person, set a reminder for tomorrow at 9 a.m. to create a meme about the SpongeBob meme of this, but I make it about this part of like Salt Lake. And then next thing I know, I have like 50 reminders for in a week, and whatever works to spur the curiosity, have some fun.
I just think like, and maybe this is a common thread amongst all my kind of quirky projects, is just like, nowadays, it just seems like the barrier to entry is so low on a lot of this stuff. And maybe that's why I like running, because like you mentioned, it requires literally no fancy equipment or prep work. It's just, you just lace up and go out your front door and you're ready to go. And a lot of my projects kind of jive. Like I do like, you want to make a t-shirt about something, you can just go online and quickly mock up a t-shirt and get it out and ready to sell like immediately nowadays. It's like, and that's what I appreciate is like, if you do have an idea of a project and you can kind of execute it without, too much effort to do,
Yep.
nowadays, which I think is helpful.
There's never been an easier time to get to competent at anything.
Yes, agreed. Yeah.
Like, I mean, especially like, because I've always been someone who's like, I'll figure it out. Like, I'm pretty good at just like figuring things out. But then it's like, oh, cool. Now I have ChatGPT and YouTube. Like,
right.
I can pretty much figure out most things pretty quickly. And so in the same way, it's like, oh, like I want to put this together. I want to think about this, or like it's never been easier. And especially like coming back to the example of like getting to this point in your life where you're like, I don't want to do like a fun project. I want to do something interesting to get to know the city more, get to know the community better, whatever that impetus might be. But like, there's no easier way to do it.
Yeah. The execution, super easy. It's like, that's where like, what's important is having like the ideas or like the inspiration, or having like a good idea that then you can then, it's easier to execute said idea. But having like a spark or an interesting take or something you want to do that's kind of out of the norm, that's where the creativity lies, I think. So.
Totally. And like, a lot of people think that creativity is this, I don't paint, I don't draw, I don't do this. It's like, no. Creativity is a mentality, not like an actual act. And so even, let's use running as an example. Inherently not a creative thing. Most would agree. But when you're like, hey, I actually here's this idea I have, I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to go do this. Like, that is the way to apply creativity to a mundane thing to have a great outcome.
No, agreed. And like, I would say like, even I'm not a photographer by any like semblance of the word whatsoever, but I just like having the unique ideas of like what to take pictures of that can spur conversation or discussion or interest. I think is kind of where I have that perspective on. Like, you can kind of thumb through the Instagram accounts, like none of them are like great pictures by any means that you'd like want printed up on your wall, or like is going to adorn some sort of calendar, of like naturalistic beauty or anything like that. But I think like there is a fair amount of just like creativity when it comes to like the topic or the content of what you want to like take photos of, whether it's like, I mean, one of my favorite projects is just like going down the 9 line and just taking pictures of every single one of the signs. It's just like cataloging and the variety and the difference and the lighting and all that stuff. No individual picture was like, quote unquote amazing or beautiful, but whenever you have a collection, it's like all these signs faced roughly the same way. It's like, it kind of, it's kind of a little bit intriguing and eye-catching. So,
hey, whenever the SLSees coffee table book is ready, I will be the first one to purchase it, and it will be right in the middle of my coffee table.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah.
But then, the Crown Burger one was fun because I remember waking up and to a story of you being like, "All right, today I'm doing this," and I was like, kind of want to join in. Like, I could use Crown Burger today.
Yeah.
So it was fun to be a part of one of those ones.
Yeah. So that one was, so that one spurred. That was one that was actually sitting in my notes section. One of the few projects that I have in mind, like one of 2, I think, at the time. And just like, the planets aligned, and I was like, okay, I have like a half a day. Let's just do it. Let's go out there and do it. And so, for those that might not know, I like just visited all the Crown Burgers across the great state of Utah, which is basically Salt Lake County, and then one up in Davis County, all in the same day, and ate a menu item. So, not a hefty challenge by any means, but just like something like that kind of resonated people because of how much like Crown Burgers is like an establishment and like inherently Utahn. And after doing that, I was just like amazed by the response from out-of-staters that would chime in and just like, oh man, this is one thing I miss mostly about Utah. It seemed to like resonated not just with locals, but just like with a whole vast swath of, the diaspora of Utahns across America. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just fun to be creative and think about these oddball different ideas and things. So.
Totally. And it's like this inverse relation, because people think like the more time you put into it, or the more time or thought you put into something, the better outcome it's going to be. But at the end of the day, like, not true. Like, go execute and you don't even know what the outcome's going to be. All you can control is your input. And so for you being like, this is something I thought about, it's probably going to take me a couple hours. I don't want to ruin the rest of my day. So we're going to menu item, because if you're having a Crown Burger at every Crown Burger, you would crash quickly. But then at the same time, like, something that's, takes a few hours of execution, but also something that everyone's like, oh my gosh, like, I miss Crown Burger. Crown Burger's the best. Or I didn't know there was the new one down in Holiday, or like just like little things that people can can gravitate towards in something so simple, but at the same time, it takes that little bit of creativity to make it unique and fun.
Yeah, and just like thinking about this conversation, it's like the other like major aspect is like I never go out to do something to make it popular. It's like I'm like true to myself. Like these are things I genuinely find interesting, and oftentimes they bomb and no one else finds it interesting. Like I've posted so many pictures of like street signs, like just like weird street signs, unique fonts of street signs, or collections of like all the street signs that have like states mentioned or something like that. And those inevitably fail, and I know they're going to fail, but I don't care because like it's for me. It's like, and that's true about everything that I kind of post about. It's like it's coming from like a genuine interest and a genuine love of all these just different oddball, and you never know what's going to resonate and what's not going to resonate. And at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter whenever you kind of do these projects, because at the core, you know, you just find your hobbies and you do what you like doing, and that's what matters the most, you know. So
and like that's and it's always interesting too, because like there's so many people who, I mean, content creators, influencers, or people who want to do it.
Right.
And it's like, well, what's your motivation? Like, this is my platform. This is going to make money. So this. I'm like, well, I don't want to talk. Like, the conversation over. Like, I'm not. I've learned I'm very rarely motivated by people who are just like financially successful. Like, good for you. So great. Awesome. Whatever. But like, the people that are motivated by passion, and not mutually exclusive by any means, but like the passionate people are the people who, because you can sniff out passion from a mile away. And so like in a similar way, you're like, I don't care if this bombs or not. This is something that I want to have on my profile to remember that it happened. Yeah. And we'll go from there, compared if you're like, well, you know, if the last time I posted about this, I got 75% of the last views likes and interaction. Like, ugh. Like, don't
I just feel like most people can just see through that, and just like the lack of, you know, being genuine, and it's just not appealing to them. And they much rather see people who are like very invested in whatever quirky habit or interest that they have, but they're like super into it. I think that makes it just more appealing for people to watch. But
bingo. Absolutely. I mean, as we look through, forward to Salt Lake, what makes you excited, or less excited as we start to look forward?
Oh, that's a great question. With the city as a whole, like I'm always amazed about like the growth that has occurred over the past decade. I'm just curious about what that means for the makeup and of the city, you know, 10 years from now. I was talking to someone like just thinking about 400 South along the tracks line, how radically different that looked whenever I first arrived to what it is now, where you have all these like 5-story like housing complexes that kind of abut where the track stations are. It's just so radically different. I'm seeing the same transformation like on North Temple and on the west side in certain areas, and just like where this leads, and some of these major projects that get discussed, you know, whether it's the new SEG center or area near downtown, near where the Delta Center is, or the reimagining of the ballpark, or the potential opportunity for doing MLB Stadium out, you know, on the west side as well. Like I'm curious how that will change the dynamics of the city, both for the good and the bad. And also just to see, you know, I always try to keep an open mind and perspective. Like maybe some of these projects aren't necessarily what I think is in the best interest, but you know, still be open and positive. And a lot of people, you know, appreciate some of these changes in the city. But I don't know where I was going with that. But I'm mostly curious to see how these radical, big infrastructure projects and developments will change the city.
Totally, because like. Even when I lived in Seattle, which was going through a lot of changes then, it's interesting to compare what they were doing and what now is happening in Salt Lake. Like when I was there, it's when they tore down the freeway along the Sound, and like that was gone. And then it was when they were finally finishing out like the last part of like drilling to get the last part of the subway, which are huge infrastructural changes, don't get me wrong. But then it's like you start to look at Salt Lake and you're like, oh, like all of like there's 4 or 5 like city and geography changing projects coming in, and then you see the growth. And I was actually having a conversation with one of my friends who's in real estate, and he kind of put it into context for me that I hadn't, because obviously the wildfires in LA has destroyed so much residential area, and he's like, you realize what % of them will never be able to go back to LA. Like you can't just build neighborhoods in a year, 2, 3, or 4, especially like all of the schools, all of the, like there's just so much to do. And then everyone's fighting for those resources, whether it be people building it, all of the different resources, or even the rest of the community, whether that be apartments, condos, houses in LA, or even up to Palm Springs and around there, like it can't absorb the entire population for people to live the lives they need to. And so that there's some of people that were already in there being like, maybe we should leave LA, I don't know. And now here's this event that makes everything change. And how many of those are like, you know what, actually Utah's the place I want to go. People have said so much. So a bunch of my friends moved there during COVID and they love it. Like, let's go try it out. And so I think in the next, 6 months to a year and a half, I think there's going to be a lot of people just being like, you know what, if it's not there, it's here. And so I think that's going to be another boon on top of it. But it's interesting to see how much it's changing, because we like to think this is normal. This is like what happens everywhere, or at least in a developing city. But then you're like, wait, no. Like, this is like unreal amounts of growth. And how do we grow in a way that it doesn't all fall apart?
Yeah, and you keep that kind of quirkiness alive and that mentality. I know like Austin has that keep Austin weird catchphrase. I feel like it's also applicable for Salt Lake, keep Salt Lake weird and
Portland, Austin, Salt Lake,
in different respects, for different ways than the other cities, of course. But like, I don't know, there's just always that counterculture idea, that uniqueness associated with the city that I hope we can keep. So, I would be lying if I would say I'm not worried about how these large developments will impact the city. But, keep an optimistic mind. You never know. I always think about, like, I was against, like, the Eccles Theater getting built for a couple of nuanced financial reasons. But, like, it turned out to be such a great gem and, like, a great addition. So I always have that in the back of my mind whenever it comes to some of these larger projects that come online. But, yeah, it's kind of trippy if you take Google Maps and Street View and you can kind of go back in time on some of these major thoroughfares, like all the way back basically a decade ago. It's kind of interesting to see the changes that have already happened, and then you kind of extrapolate out onto these other areas, and it makes you wonder what it's going to look like. Yeah,
totally. You can almost go street by street.
Yeah,
of like, even think about Main Street, downtown Salt Lake, of like how many bars and restaurants and things have all turned over. 9th and 9th, Sugar House, and like the place I'm curious about the next phase of things is, so we have these kind of like pockets that have been developed from like Post District, Maven, Central 9th, Granary. And so you have like kind of these like epicenters of investment development, but then you still have all of these, like everything in between. There's still a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
When you drive around, you're like, well, that's a vacant lot that's going to be something.
Right.
That's a parking lot that doesn't make sense anymore. And so not only do we see the growth and the planned growth, but then you go around and you're like, there's still a lot of places that can happen. And thankfully, like, I've heard of a lot that are going to start happening, and thankfully the optimistic part of my brain tends to perk up more. But at the same time, I'm with you. Like, every time I see a new apartment getting built, I'm like, I just want to see the model. Like, there has to be some sort of economic model, whether from the city or the state, or if it's everybody doing this independent investment analysis and all of them are green light go. I'm like, just like help me, like just walk me through this. That's all I really want, because I can't see that many like apartments and being like, like we're growing that fast. But again, optimism. I will never root for anything to fail in the city.
Absolutely.
I've learned nothing's as good as it seems. Nothing's as bad as it seems.
That's right.
And so hopefully it all works out, but a little bit of tension in my chest as we get through it. But it's usually how most things go. Bryant, want to end with the two questions I always ask everybody at the end. First, if people want to, if you could have someone on the Small Lake City podcast and hear more about what they're up to or their story, who would you want to hear from?
I'm like always fascinated whenever I have like conversations with like reporters. Like, I feel like they just know so much. It's crazy. It's just like, because they've seen all these different stories and they've done all this, involved research for like writing their publications and stories, and any sort of like reporter would be great. I love like, Pollock at the Tribune. She's like a culture writer. I love like Taylor Anderson, Luke Garrett for Building Salt Lake, who'd like talk about developments. Ben Wood at City Weekly. Like, any of those type of people, I think would have just a litany of stories and probably opinions about the city
they
itself.
Probably know like the underbelly of everything.
Yeah,
in every single way.
Yeah, and they always have like a very researched perspective and just are just so knowledgeable. So I'd maybe suggest one of those folks. So
I guess the only like journalistic person I've had was, Brian Schott, who's one of the political contributors. he knows politics better
Yeah,
than
it's
arguably
crazy.
anybody here. But I haven't done like, again, it'd be interesting to talk to a culture journalist. Be like,
Yeah.
what do you know? Like, you gotta know more than I do.
I'm just like fascinated like how they find these sort of stories, like human interest stories, and it's just over a variety of topics. Like it's just unbelievable. It's like I feel like I know a lot about like the geography and locations, but they seem to know more about like the people and the organizations. And I'm just always floored with like what's going on, in the city itself and by whom.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. I'll have to find. Yeah, I'll reach out to some. Maybe even have a little panel with everybody and be like, talk to me about all your things.
Yeah.
And then if people want to find you on Instagram or follow more
Sure.
SLCees, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, so mostly Instagram, I would say. Yeah, it's like SLSees, which I always have to spell it out because it's a bit of a pun. It's SLSees. Like I see you.
Yes.
So that's usually where I post. And hopefully, you probably won't. I call it the mildly interesting of like subreddit of Salt Lake City is what it is. Like not everything is going to be a aha moment or oh that's really cool, but I mean hopefully enough posts catch your eye and catch your interest. So
No, as someone who loves this city and always wants to learn more about it, there's always something that you post. I'm like, and I learned something.
There you go.
I did not know this existed. So
I'm glad to hear that.
Oh yeah, keep on posting the oddities. Even if it's just me following and liking, I will still sign up for it all. Looking forward to the next challenge or way that you get to experience the city in a fun, nuanced way. But thanks for all that you've done, and I'm excited for what's to come.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This was fun. Thanks.
No, thank you, Bryant. Oh man, the more you know.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Salt Lake City Podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, review, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. And we'll catch you next week. We'll see you there.